Hey y'all, hey, it's JJ Conway. Welcome to Building Wealth Together, where our goal is to help you walk in abundance and leave a legacy. It's Mindset Monday, where we take the best teachings on leadership, mindset, and motivation and apply them to your life. This empowers all 5 areas of your abundance: health, wealth, spiritual growth, relationships, and self-expression. Let's get into it. Today's topic is very special to me. For those of you who don't already follow me on Facebook, you will have missed my kind of running replay of last week's International Maxwell Certification. As a John Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and coach, the International Maxwell Certification event that is held twice a year is one of my favoriteest events of the year. I at least know, if nothing else, I'm going to have 2 times a year where I will get to speak to a group of new speakers, trainers, and coaches. And every time I grow. And so what we're going to talk about today is a very special session in which John Maxwell answered questions from his alumni. So you get people who go for the first time, then you've got others of us who love the experience, and we go back year after year, and that's the alumni group, okay? And so for me, this conference was absolutely amazing. And if you're looking at being a speaker, a trainer, or a coach, I encourage you to get with me offline and learn more about being a John Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and coach, because the John Maxwell team portal is a business in a box. Everything you need to succeed, from contracts to training to everything that you would need to go out, how to go and prepare for your first big meeting, how to squash that little voice inside that says you're not good enough, how to progress even when you don't feel like anybody in your family supports you. Like, these are the things that hold other speakers, trainers, and coaches back. And the John Maxwell team equips you in order to overcome these and succeed. During the conference, those of us who have come back, we not only get to interact with John C. Maxwell himself, but we also have top of the line faculty that we were able to interact with. And we had 3 amazing keynote speakers, one for each day. So we had Dr. Caroline Leaf talking about the neurology of the brain and how it actually takes 63 days to secure a new habit. When we have a habit, a lot of times we don't actually break a habit. Now, we might replace a habit with a different habit, but it's still, everybody always talks about it takes 21 days to form a new habit. But I've tried twice eating vegan raw diet 21 days. And let me tell you, that did not become a habit. But I can tell you something else also. I can tell you that whenever I've been consistent in my daily exercise, my daily prayer, my daily study, that has become a habit that's so deeply ingrained in me that something feels off when I no longer execute. For example, today being a holiday, I woke up and I was a speaker at a global dialogue on women in the workforce, on gender disparity in the workforce, and it was absolutely amazing. But they were all on the other side of the world in their evening time, and I was up at dark 30. And so it threw me off my game, and I realized, I don't feel right. I hadn't done my devotion. I hadn't gone to work out. I hadn't done any of the things that I normally started my day off, because it was a habit and I was off balance. Okay. And so I really enjoyed her. First day's keynote was Bishop T.D. Jakes, but one of the things he talked about was the double clutch. Sometimes while you're shifting, you've got to return to neutral to get yourself rerighted and recharged and refreshed so you can go forward. And a lot of us right now, we're in these situations where we are trying so hard to make things happen in our lives. But what we really need to do is drop back to neutral and then shift again forward. All right. And by dropping back to neutral, when I'm frustrated or when I'm angry or when I'm trying to force something to work out, those are signs that I need to drop back into my prayer, my study, and my leaning on God rather than leaning on myself. And so what happens in those situations, when I can drop back down to neutral, I can be refilled, I can be re-inspired, I can be re-encouraged. And then sometimes I can get new direction that will cut through all the frustration and cut through all the things that didn't work and cut through all of the people who said they would help you, but they didn't, and cut through all the things you bought that were supposed to make this happen and it didn't, and cut through all of the baggage in the background that we think matters, but actually really doesn't. Helps us cut through all of that and find the path to move forward in the direction that God has called us to go. The last guest speaker that we had, and this one really impacted me because when I heard he was the pastor of the largest church in the world, 21 different campuses and blah, 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 I was just like, oh, great. Another prosperity, smile, and love life, and everything you want will be handed to you on a silver platter kind of preacher. Like, that's what I was expecting. And I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but I think it's important for us to acknowledge our biases. Sometimes we think that somebody's experience or background or their calling is so different from ours that we can't possibly get anything from those individuals. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. Just because somebody's beliefs or lifestyle or upbringing is divergent from yours doesn't mean they don't have something that they can offer you. And I'm so glad that I set aside my biases and went ahead and participated as a member of the John Maxwell team, because this was the one workshop that absolutely blew me away. And some of you are on today because you heard me last week say that I was going to tell you about John Maxwell's comment regarding my question about the racial biases that we all intrinsically have. And we're going to get to that in a second. But I have to explain to you this session by Miles McPherson. We actually had two of them. One where he kind of did an overview for everybody. And then we had a deep dive with the alumni. So again, if you're interested in getting deeper access to these speakers, the reason I was able to have those experiences with Ivan Meisner, Dr. Cialdini, Bruce Lipton, like all of these different people come into our life, Carly Fiorina, like the reason I had access to these people is because of my proximity that was granted as being an alumni with the John Maxwell team. Overall, hands down, best investment I've ever made in my personal and professional growth. All right. And so he's doing this alumni session. And in the session, Miles McPherson challenged us to ask a question that I think very few of us want to ask. And the reason I say very few of us want to ask this question is because maybe about a month or two ago, I had a friend that I've been knowing for a decade. She made a comment that I felt was racially insensitive. And I tried to address it. You know me, I'm pretty out there. I'm going to tell a story in a heartbeat. So I handled it incorrectly. I'll just be upfront about that. I did not handle it in the most in the most graceful manner. But tensions have been high, and I'm sick and tired as a person of color with people thinking that I'm not a person of color because maybe I don't sound like one on the phone, and they feel like they can say things to me that they wouldn't say to a more black person. Hopefully I'm communicating clearly of the frustration that I have being a black person that most people don't think is a black person, including black people. So I just took it out there publicly. And again, I didn't do that the right way, but I had a really hard time with the supposition that something was wrong with me for bringing this out. Because the question that Miles McPherson challenged with was asking others, have I done something that appears to be racially insensitive or offensive? And if I examine my life, I can't help but acknowledge that there have been times I have done something that appears racially insensitive or offensive. I've got one on Facebook. If you scroll back, if you stalk me enough, please don't stalk me. But if you scroll back enough on my Facebook, you will find a post from when I was stationed at Fort Belvoir, and the people in the Fort Belvoir hair shop, which is now since closed down after this, the people in the Fort Belvoir hair shop were very racist to me. And I made a comment about one of them, about, she's clearly a foreigner, spoken in broken English, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt that perhaps she was from a place where you don't look people in the eye because it's disrespectful to look people in the eye. And for any of you who are black people who are my age or older, you'll remember that when we were younger, one of the things that we did not do is we did not look white people in the eye, because to do so would be disrespectful. Now, I say we kind of loosely in this. I did not grow up with that mindset because my mother is white and my stepdad is white, and we were reared kind of in a white culture environment, right? I didn't learn this about not looking white people in the eye until I went off to the Air Force Academy and made all kinds of people upset and ruffled all kinds of feathers because apparently I was a black person who did not know my place, okay? So I don't want anybody to think that my mom reared me with that. No, she reared us to be strong, independent women, and she didn't put race into the factor, right? I think it's important to note that in families where race isn't a factor, you find increasing amounts of people who judge people by their productivity and their character rather than their appearance or their past. So going back to the Fort Belvoir Post, when you look at the Fort Belvoir Post, you'll see that I made this comment about the woman. And at the time, I was living in Springfield, Virginia. And for many of you who don't know Springfield, Virginia, the particular neighborhood I was living in was very international. In fact, I think there were only like 5 American families in the whole neighborhood. It wasn't a big neighborhood. It was just big enough, one big loop around and a side street. So there was maybe 100 townhomes in that neighborhood. But it was mostly foreigners. And so there's certain cultures in our nation where you show respect by not looking people in the eye. And I was trying to give that benefit of the doubt to this lady, but we all knew in my heart, we all knew that they were being racist. And the reactions of the ladies in one of the black hair care forums that I posted in one of the military hair care forums was like, don't you dare report them. We need access to our hair. That is a whole nother discussion. But if you find that discussion on my Facebook, you will find about halfway down in all these posts of people expressing their opinion, you will find one of my former coworkers who says, I can't believe you're calling Asian people Oriental. Now, this was 10 years ago, and I didn't know. I mean, if you watch movies, if you look at the books and things, you wouldn't know that it's offensive to call people Oriental. I think what she posted was, people are Asian, things are Oriental. Well, I had no idea. I'm one of those people in a marginalized group where people call us all kinds of names that aren't right. So as soon as I hear that, boom, I make a change. And I don't have a problem making that change. And I don't get offended that she pointed it out publicly, because not only do I get to make a change, but now other people can make a change, okay? I've had to since acknowledge that I am quite alone in that. In the DISC inventory, I am what's considered a dominant personality, and only 1% of people in our American culture, or it might even be worldwide, I don't know, but only 0.1% of people in our nation are women who are dominant personalities. Okay. And that was definitely an eye-opener for me when I sat at a table with another group, 8 other high dominant women, and one steady guy, S on the DISC scale, the DISC scale. S indicates steady. Those are the people that like peace and harmony, and they like things to get done with as little rocking the boat as possible, and they're always concerned about the feelings of others. And if it wasn't for them, the world would be a very, very mean, evil place, right? I love my steady types. I need them in my life to balance out my dominance. And so when I was at that table, the one guy at the table was also the one steady person, and the rest of us were women, and the rest of us were dominant. And he was like, don't you get offended when somebody has a better way for you to do something? And me and the ladies, we're all looking at each other like, what is he talking about? Like, we could not comprehend the point he was trying to make, because for us, and 2 of the ladies said it, and I chimed in with agreement, says, well, if you've got a better way to do it, tell me, because I'm all about efficiency and effectiveness. And if I can do it better, I want to do it better. But his comments, as he began to explain how, 70%, I think it's 65 or 70%, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but 65, 70% of people in the world are steady. They're steady personality types, and they value harmony and they value peace. Dominant personality types, we actually value conflict, because conflict makes us better. Iron sharpens iron, right? But that's not the most of the world. And so you can't always treat the most of the world that way. While in retrospect, I think the person who posted that on my Facebook page was probably trying to be offensive, I actually took great pleasure in learning that day something that would stop me from offending another person in that way in the future. So when Miles McPherson gave us that challenge as alumni in the John Maxwell team to go out and ask people who didn't look like us, people who didn't have our backgrounds, people who had different lifestyles from us, just fill in the blank, different from me in whatever way, go out and ask 5 or so or however many people, have I done something or said something that appears racially insensitive or offensive? I was excited, because I know that when I get honest answers to that question, I grow. we had the opportunity to have some questions and answers with John C. Maxwell. And guess what I did? You know me, I like to stir the pot, and I like to get to the real answers and the nitty gritty of it all. And I didn't want to just get on there and say, I thank you for everything you've done. My life is so much more awesome, even though it's true. My life is so much more awesome ever since I became a part of your team. You know, my business has grown and all that stuff, right? Those are all truth statements. But I wanted to get to the nitty gritty, and I wanted to see how a true leader, someone who's written hundreds of books about leadership, would respond to this question. I asked him if that question had uncovered any surprising areas of his life and what changes he made as a result. He kind of looked at the screen. Wow, she actually asked me a real question. Like, everybody up to then had been pretty much fluffy questions. Like, what's the greatest lesson you learned from your father who had recently passed away? A phenomenal leader, and his legacy lives on in John. What recommendations do you have for people in COVID who are still leaders? You know, he just kind of wrote stuff, but you can see his face is like, wow, she asked me a real question. And I was actually very encouraged by his answer. He didn't try to pretend that he's done this huge, overarching change, and he didn't donate $1 million to the NAACP or some grand gesture that, like a lot of people are doing these things that on paper it looks like, wow, they really care, but actually what they're really doing is they're just making a gesture so they can alleviate their conscience of, oh, well, I did something, so I'm not racist, right? So, oh boy, I feel like I'm about to lose half my podcast subscribers. But we have to address these things as a nation. It's like saying, well, I'm not racist. I have black friends. I have a ton of people who are racist who considered me their friend. I found out that they were racist with all of these uprisings that have come out because we were so not friends that I didn't see that side of them. Okay, if that makes any sense. Okay. And so today as a leader, we're challenged to really do some introspection and really ask the question, have I done something that appears racially insensitive or offensive? And I'm going to be honest with you, J.J. Conway absolutely has. And I have the same opinion that John had, which was basically that, we all have. And what it's up to us is to take what we've learned and grow from it. It's okay, I've made some mistakes. I've said and done some things that were not cool. It's time to move forward and fix it. We need to challenge why we do what we do. We need to grow and move forward, but we cannot let the past beat us up. So if you today are somebody who maybe has said or done something that's racially insensitive or offensive, now's the time to move forward. Now's the time to make a change. And now's the time to open up your eyes. And one of the things that John said that he was doing is that he was doing more research. He was having conversations with people who didn't look like him. He was reading more books about the whole situation. And unlike about a year ago, some of my friends who were at the International Maxwell Certification for the first time asked some very, very pointed questions about how the John Maxwell team is handling racial dynamics. Now, this was all before George Floyd, right? This was it August or March of last year? I think it was March of 2019. At the time, those answers were very unsatisfactory because those answers came from a place of, it's not really a big deal. If you work hard and you do what you're supposed to do, it's really not a big deal. It's not a big deal for us, so it's not a big deal for anybody else. And we overcame all these things, and so, we know that it can be done. And I was really actually kind of bummed by that. But when John responded about, here I am, learning, and here I am growing, and here I am adapting my behavior, and here I am challenging and exploring my beliefs, not to let the past hold us back and beat myself up. Oh, why did I do this? Why did I do this? But so that I can understand who I am and move forward. What I heard in his voice was a genuine spirit. I posted on my page, I was going to play some clips and things like that for today's podcast and for today's Mindset Monday class. But unfortunately, I didn't get the permissions in time. And so I can't really do that. Like, I want to preserve the integrity of the alumni only session. And that's why I'm speaking in broad terms rather than reading from you the notes that I took of what he actually said. Okay. Because I do want to remain in integrity with the organization. But I think I want to highlight the difference between what John is doing, where he is learning, he is growing, he is exploring, he is interviewing, he is reading. The difference between what John is doing and what so many others are doing. Because here's what so many others are doing. So many others are making a statement, and that's great. So many others are making donations to overarching, vetted African-American organizations, and that's great, right? Now, some people have a real big outcry. Oh, I can't believe they're going to, give $500 million to the NAACP, but they're not going to fund local things. I do believe that's a problem, but I also understand why people of high net worth are going to go to the NAACP rather than go to the local things, because a lot of local charities that are actually doing the most good, they haven't been around long enough, or they haven't had a long enough proven track record that somebody of high net worth feels like they can drop $1 million in, and that $1 million is actually going to be a good tax deduction. It's going to go somewhere and do some good work. You and I both know that it will. And in fact, you and I both know that if you gave the Black Dollar Fair $1 million, if you gave the Young Kings and Queens Academy $1 million, if you gave the McKinney Bird Academy $1 million, if you gave, well, it's not a black organization, but if you gave military single moms $1 million, like if you gave any of these grassroots organizations $1 million today, they would do amazing good things in the community. Okay. We all know that, but for someone of a high net worth, they don't know that. They have to know you personally, know your work personally. So I understand that, but writing a check to the NAACP doesn't change your mind. And this was the beef that I've had with so many people that are no longer my friends on Facebook, is teaching in an inner city and talking about how you sacrifice so much of your life to teach these little black children who don't appreciate what you're doing. Your mind is clearly not changed. It's not about the grandiose sacrificial activity, but it's about the mindset. It's about the mindset. And John's embarking on a vision to change his mindset regarding race. I always feel a little awkward when we talk about the need to change our mindset about race, because that would presuppose, and I don't want anyone here who's listening to me to think that I presuppose that we need to change our minds about race, okay? Because I imagine that most of the people that follow me are already fairly progressive and already have an appreciation for all peoples and all strengths and all colors and all those things, right? I want to be very careful not to make it sound like, in order to attract abundance in your life, you have to change your mind about race. Well, I don't know what your mind is, so I don't know that it needs to be changed per se, okay? So I don't want to imply that, but he himself, as he considered the question that Miles McPherson put to us, and as he considered the question as I rephrased it, said, you know what? I've got to change some things. And I want to encourage you today, as we begin to close out our Mindset Monday, that you might want to look in your life about what may need to change. I know for me personally, for years, I was part of the problem. How many of us are willing to admit that for a long time we were part of the problem? I think I was a senior major in the Air Force before I realized what impact racism had on my career. I'm going to get the job done, and I've always found a way to get the job done, and I'm going to make this and that happen, and I've always found a way to make this and that happen, right? And so I personally did not realize the extent to which racism is institutionalized in the American culture. Not just the schools, not just our southern cities, not just pockets here and there, but institutionalized and woven throughout the fabric of our country. So for me, I had to change my perspective. I had to change my perspective when I got to be what they considered to be too uppity. And when people decided to teach me a lesson to help me stay in my place. And I wish to God that I had realized beforehand what was happening and what was going on. But then there's that part of me that's like, well, I don't know if I would have had the success that I have today if I had caught on to what was happening, or if I would have done like so many other people of color are doing today, which is crumbling and hiding behind whatever screen they can hide behind so that they don't have to make anybody upset, so they don't have to rock the boat, and they could just have a good job and bring home good money and send their kids to a good school and hopefully coast through without tripping any of the modern day lynching strategies. John didn't say that. I said that. Okay? Just make sure we're clear. All right. One last thing that John did say that I want to leave you with today is I want to highlight to you 2 books that he said he was reading. And the first one was by one of the guest speakers that we were talking about earlier. That is Miles McPherson. The 2 books that are on John's bookshelf right now. One is The Third Option, Hope for a Racially Divided Nation. And I'm going to go ahead and put the links to these in the show notes for today's podcast once I finish processing this. He's basically giving to us a discussion about race that encourages us not to look at people as black or white, but to look at people as a third option, and that is humans created in the image of God. So that's one book that's on John's bookshelf right now that he's actively reading. And the other book that he said he was actively reading is The Color of Compromise, the truth about the American church's complexity in racism. Now, I have not read this book and I have no experience with this author, but one thing I do have experience with, being a black woman married to a white man, oh boy, I got a lot of experience about racist churches. And the worst part about it is people don't even realize that they're being racist. People don't realize that they're being discriminatory, whether it's a black church or a white church. You know, there are very few black churches that accept an interracial couple. There are very few white churches that accept an interracial couple. There are more white churches that accept a black couple than an interracial couple, and there are more black churches that will accept a white couple than an interracial couple. But I get it from both sides. And so this book is definitely next up on my reading list. It's a narrative of how people of faith have historically had to work against racial justice, but it's also highlighting the fact that the church is complicit in racism. It's The Color of Compromise. Okay, so there we have it today. That is my summary. The race discussion that we had as part of John Maxwell's International Maxwell Certification. We had some amazing leadership building, neuroscience building events in the event itself. If you would like a private lesson, if you would like me to come to your company and teach you some highlights from this conference, if you would like me to come and do diversity training or communication training or personality training, which is one of my favorite things to do, or even financial training, which is really my lane, right? Go ahead and reach out, because all of these things play a role in walking in abundance. We cannot be fully abundant unless we welcome everyone else's skills and talents that can be brought to bear to help us accomplish our goal. And when the Lord sends somebody my way that has a skill set and a talent that I need, but I dismiss them because they're a tall blonde woman with blue eyes, and I don't think she can possibly be someone I work with because she's probably had her whole life handed to her on a silver platter. Like, these are the things we tell ourselves about people, right? I'm just being real with you. If I deny that person an opportunity to speak into my life because I look at her and instantly judge her, which is something I did for a very, very long time, I am missing out not only on the abundance that God has called me to, but I am also stifling her blessing and her being a part of my calling. And it's very, very easy for us to say, well, I don't have a problem with white people. I don't have a problem with black people. I don't have a problem with Hispanic or Latinx people. I don't have a problem with Asians. I don't have a problem with fill in the blank. But let somebody that you have a bias against walk in that door, or you'll find out real quick that you have some underlying biases. And you may find, like I did, that you have been acting in ways that are racially insensitive or offensive. The good news about it is our past does not determine our future. We do. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you all for joining me. Those of you who are joining me live, thank you for joining me on Mindset Monday. We are looking at changing the time and date for Mindset Monday. We might move it to a different day. We are also, for those of you who are not listening live, if you join my Building Wealth Together Facebook group, you will see the dial-in information in that header that you are able to dial in and be with us live. Thanks again for those of you listening on the podcast, make sure that you don't just listen to the podcast, but make sure you subscribe to the notifications, that you join me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, JJ Knows the Way, and share this goodness with a friend. Y'all take care and be blessed. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe at jjconway.org. Now go walk in abundance and leave a legacy.